everybody. How's everyone
Hello.
doing? Everybody having a good extended break? Hopefully everybody had a chance to have a decent meal, maybe some pumpkin pie, right? So that's what you're supposed to eat at this time of year, I think.
Did you?
Oh yeah, yeah, I certainly did. So let's talk about a bunch of things. So first, let's hit up the schedule again. So I want to remind everybody that tomorrow evening, your first project, that assignment number 6, the edit the action scene, is due. So you got to get it uploaded to Canvas by the end of tomorrow night in order for it to be critiqued. Woohoo! So we get to finally see everybody's projects. It's going to be exciting, right? That project is going to be due on the 14th. So same deal. And the evening of the 14th, you got to get it in. So not much time left here. Talked about that. Okay, what else do I need to talk about? Any questions about last week, about the color correction session that we did? Anybody here get a chance to play around with it, color correction, and start messing with the controls? Okay, I got Angel did it. Anybody else? Well, you definitely want to take advantage of that information I gave you and use it while you color correct this project that's due tomorrow. So if you get a chance to, if you haven't started already, you should jump on it today, or allocate some time tomorrow to get it done. Like I said, not much time left. So we talked about that. All right, well, let's just get into the assignment number 8. Let's talk about that. Shooting music video. Is it possible to show how to save a sequence again? Yeah, I could talk about that in a minute. Let me get through this real quick. So assignment number 8, shoot the music video. Again, this is the same deal as last time. Nothing is handed in. This is just the place marker for the grade, just to get you going. You should be done shooting by the 6th. If you're not done shooting by the 6th, man, good luck trying to get this thing done. You're going to be pulling some all-nighters and yet it. But if that's what you have to do, that's what you got to do. So remember, again, everything's the same. We're picking that one song from the artist or a piece of music that inspires you. You're going to develop the concept, which you should have at this point. Can't be just a montage. You're going to pick one of these themes, all this stuff we've talked about. 15 camera setups. Those 2 concept ideas have to be applied. Obviously, shots need to be in focus and properly exposed, please. You should have overlapping action on 30% of your shots. If you don't know what overlapping action is, well, you better go back and rewatch about a month or 2 ago when we had these long discussions about it, because I want to see some overlapping action. Multiple angles, close-ups, mediums, wide, all this stuff is, these are things you want to incorporate in your music video. So again, remember, please don't submit anything here. No projects, don't upload your files, nothing is submitted. You can't even submit it, won't let you. So this is just the placeholder. So we basically, this is going to be all your shooting, and then we have assignment number 9, which is the actual edit, which we'll talk about probably next week. And we're done. Wow. Any questions so far?
Does the music video have to be 5 minutes long?
It's got to be around. It's got to be like a legit song. It can't be a 30-second edit of music. I mean, how much time are you looking for?
Like maybe around 2 minutes and 30 seconds?
Possibly. I mean, I'd like to see something over 33 minutes at least. 5 minutes is like the average. Some people are going for 6 minutes, so it's kind of within there. I'd say 2.5 minutes is kind of on the thin end, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you can get it to more like 3 minutes, then I'd say okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so I'm going to answer a quick question. Is it possible to show how to save a sequence again? Yeah, so are you asking about how to save your project file or how to export a project file to an MP3 or MP4? Okay. I learned how to export. So you're asking just how to save your sequence? I'm slightly confused on what you're asking. So if you want to make a copy of your sequence, remember, here's all my sequences. So let's say I've got my work print, or where's my fine cut? Color grade, here we go. So let's say this is the project, this is the sequence I want to back up. There's two ways to back up. The first way I'm going to recommend is duplicating it. So I'm just going to pick the sequence that I want to duplicate, right click it, and then hit duplicate. And you'll see here, it'll make a copy of it with copy 01 at the end of it. And you either leave it that way or you can rename it to whatever you want. And this is the same way I was talking about how to, once you work through the stages of editing, like where you do your assembly edit, then you go to your rough cut, then you go to your fine cut, and then you go to color correction. Each time you move on to a stage, you want to duplicate your timeline and make a new copy of it. So that's gonna back it up within your Premiere project so that a copy of it's in there. And then the other thing is, obviously, you're going to save. You're asking if I messed it. Thank you. How did you get there? All I see is my bins. Well, if you've got your bins here, right now I'm on editing or assembly. It doesn't really matter as long as you can see your bins here. You want to make sure it says project, edit lesson here. And then I have mine arranged, sequence, media, and color grade. But here, if I just double click on the sequence, it's going to show me everything that I have in there. And again, if I go up here, it's going to back up. You could do it under assembly. It's totally fine. Just whatever workspace you're in does not matter, does not change that you have one bin here. So if I go to my assembly, look how big it is. Whatever you're in, as long as it goes to a project, you'll get the standard bins. So again, you can drop down like that or double click it and then hit this to go back up, and you can copy. And then obviously, you're going to make sure you save everything. So even when you quit, Premiere should ask you to save changes. And I would say yes. And then voila, it backs up. So also, in case some catastrophe happens, if you go in here, here's my project folders. If I back up, here's my project files. The folder, remember I told you to make that folder, put all your Premiere stuff in here. And if you look up here, there should be a folder. It says Adobe Premiere Pro Auto Saves. And if I double click that, well, looky here. Here's all these backups that are automatically backed up every 5 or 10 minutes. So in case something completely happens and you lose your project, it gets corrupt or whatever, you can just go to this folder and find the last version. So if I go here, I can arrange them by dates. So let's see, today, here we go, 3:45, edit, lesson action scene 2021 spring. There you go. Just made a copy of it. Here's the last one, was done on the 24th, and you can see it all the way goes down way into the past. So it makes incremental backups for you and stores them in this folder in case you have a problem. And that's kind of why you want to have this project folder and tell Premiere to put everything there. It's all in one place. You're going to easily be able to keep track of it. Does that make sense? Okay.
Professor, I was running into an issue that I ended up having to look up how to solve it, and I don't know if anybody else had the problem. When I was adding graphics, like my credits, sorry, I forgot what to call it, but where you watch the video that you're editing on Premiere, my video would be black. So it would be on the timeline, but it would be black, and I had to change the output setting on it. It was
interesting. What was it on?
Okay, it was, Sorry, I don't have Premiere open right now. But it was Mercury, because there's two different like Mercury settings.
Mm-hmm.
And the default one, it would go black. I had to switch it to the other one.
Interesting. So that was in settings.
Yeah, it's like file project. I'm sure if I looked at it, I could remember how to do it. I didn't want to overload my computer by running Premiere when I don't need to. But yeah, it was so frustrating because I couldn't see my video at all. So I couldn't see what I was putting my text over. So what, let me see.
So we're saying file, we're saying preferences.
I don't know. It's under, if you go to file projects, I think.
Oh, let's see. Okay, hang on. Project settings.
Project settings, yeah, and then general. So that's what it was on. And then it told me to switch to software only.
And
Interesting. Then my video displayed. It was really weird. But I don't know if anybody else is running into that problem, but if you are, that's how I fixed it.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never had that problem before because basically the first one that says Mercury playback engine GPU accelerated uses your graphic card to accelerate. So maybe there was some weird incompatibility with your graphic card, and then by switching it to software only, it bypasses. I don't know. The downside to that is that you lose all the a lot of the real time. Your CPU is doing all the heavy lifting instead of working in conjunction with the graphic card. So it may bog down your system a little bit, but if that's what it takes sometimes, then, yeah, I've never heard about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it ran a little slower, but that's the only way I could see my video.
Huh. And that was only when you got graphics on?
Yeah, that was only so I would pull the graphic onto the timeline. And then after I did that every single time, I could not see the rest of my video. My video was viewable in the timeline, but I couldn't watch it. So I couldn't see what my credits look like on my video.
Must be something with doing the alpha channels or something. I don't know. That's bizarre.
But I mean, the important thing is that it was fixed. I thought it deleted my video at first, so that was kind of frightening, but it didn't.
Okay, well, there you go. Hot tip of the day. If you don't see any black, if you just got black playback, change that setting. All right, so let's talk about making music videos. So again, how many people here are still trying to figure out their whole concept? And it's okay if you are. Got one. So everybody else has got a pretty good idea of what they want to do.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I'll take that as a yes from everybody. So now that you get the idea down, well, obviously most of you got to write it up and get it to me. So please get it to me by tonight, because again, time is the essence here. We're running out of time. So once you do that, let's just talk about some of the things that you'd want to prepare for it. So one of the things, if you've chosen to, well, actually, I may back up first. First, just get to know the song. I can't stress how much you really should listen to the song. And even if you've come up with a concept of what you want to do, just kind of visualizing, listening to the music and trying to see what images form in your head. That's how you can kind of think about camera angles. Don't think of this, this is very, maybe the prior project that we just did, the action scene, was just about getting coverage and about getting a scene happening with overlapping action. And this is important too, and should have that same concept. But one of the things you want to really think about is the camera should really be part of the story. It shouldn't be just documenting and shooting and covering this thing. You should be thinking about what kind of cool angles I can do to spice this up. Because again, remember, if you really think about it, a music video is nothing more than a commercial to promote the song. That's really what it is. And some people may argue with me and say, no, well, especially in this day and age of YouTube and, online video, that the music video might be more important than the song. Maybe, but in my opinion, it's not. My opinion, it's still about the music. The artists are still fundamentally, musicians or singers or songwriters or whatever. And this is just a promotional thing for the album, the streaming, whatever way you're going to consume the music. So even wrapped in a music video, you're still consuming the music. So think of this more about eye candy. It's all about visuals. So nobody's made a music video that was so, I'm sure somebody has, but something so horrible that no one wants to look at it. They'd rather listen to it. It's all about creating these cool images. So part of it has to do with thinking about where to put the camera. Maybe, going to extreme weird angles that you may not normally think about, because those could be cool. Think about all the old, rap gangster videos from back in the 80s and the 90s. Where do they put the camera for most of those videos? Anybody know?
Towards the ground, maybe?
Yeah, they drop it down wide angle and everybody's standing up like this and getting in the frame and all that. That was a specific style that they went with, and everybody adopted it. So you want to kind of, what I would suggest is go look at a bunch of spend an hour or two on YouTube if you can tolerate it. Well, I'm sure you all can, and just start watching music videos and seeing what people do with the cameras, and finding things that may relate to what you want to do to get inspiration. Not necessarily saying you have to copy it, but to get inspired to think about the coverage in terms of camera angles, focal lengths. Am I going wide angle, or am I going to shoot it all on a telephoto and zoom in? Stuff like that you want to think about. So by listening to the lyrics, thinking about the concept that you came up with can help you kind of visualize the interpretation of what's going on. So that's the big one. Then the second one is, again, and I'm sure most of you are taking advantage of this, is use locations you have access to, and then write to those locations. So if you wrote that you were going to be in some, top of some, skyscraper building, and you don't have access to that, well, maybe that's a problem. Angel, you got a question?
Yes, actually, I was wondering, so should we film in 24 frames per second, or because I've seen like there's some music videos that they have like slow motion.
Yeah. So I'll tell
And
you what, I'm going to answer your question because it's on my list. I'm going to get to that. We're going to talk about that today.
all right, okay,
So I will get to that.
yeah,
So just jumping back to these locations, you want to just get access, shoot locations that you have access to. And again, if you're quote unquote stealing it and just going out in location to shoot, just pick an area that's not busy. Do something that's in your neighborhood, someplace that you're not going to draw attention to yourselves. But finding locations and maybe rewriting your idea to match what you have is key here. Does that make sense to everybody so far?
Yes.
Okay. So this other thing I want to talk about is going to be parallel editing. So this can be super helpful to make your music video more interesting. So, and again, I showed you guys that Moby video that I shot, and we did some parallel editing in there. If the big problem with music videos is because they're eye candy, you need a lot of shots, you need a lot of scenes. If you just have one or two scenes, it has to be really cool. It has to be really, interesting to not lose attention. Even if the music's good, if the visuals are boring or repetitive or not many, you're going to have people like turning the channel or hitting next or skipping or however you want to define it. So one good technique is to have a couple scenes. So if you have a band, let's say you go with band playing on stage, right, performance, and then you also go, your other idea would be to tell a story. Well, you're going to make sure you shoot the band all the way through the song so that you have the whole song there, because even though in your head you might, I'm only going to drop the band in here, here, and here, you may go into the edit and realize, oh, nope, I should have this part of the song with the band, but you didn't record it. Oh, well, too late. So if you're going to shoot anyone lip syncing or anyone performing with the song, go through the whole song. Don't just pick and choose your sections. Do the whole song. In fact, if I were you, if it's the band, I would do multiple angles, different, wide angle, close-ups, different perspectives, all the way through the song. So you have all this material to work with. I'm hoping that most of you finished editing your first assignment now and make that connection, right, about how much stuff you need versus what you actually need for the edit. How many people here who have already edited their project, and I hope you have, since tomorrow it's due, realize they didn't shoot enough coverage? Got like 3 people. Everybody else, yep, more people. So let that kind of be a lesson that just shoot more than you think you need. The ratios are really high on certain stuff. If I shoot a music, I shot that music video last week. I think it was last week or the week before. Yeah, I guess it was the week before. Our shooting ratio, man, we shot 2 days, 2 12-hour days for 2.5 minute music videos. And we were pretty much shooting a lot. So I can't even tell you how many times, how many angles we shot. We had our crane. We spent half a day shooting with just the crane. The crane must have had at least a dozen passes of the songs from start to end. And so are we going to use every stitch of that? No, but we don't know exactly when we go into the edit where it's going to drop in. So instead of trying to calculate that all up front, just shoot it. Just shoot extra footage. Shoot lip syncing, go through the song. In fact, when someone's lip syncing, I'll do one shot of them. If I want to do like a medium close up, then I need to do extreme close up. I might do one from the side. Go through the whole song on those passes because you just don't know when it's going to drop in your cut and work. So that means if I'm, again, going back to the band playing on stage, and then I've got a scene where maybe there's someone running away or whatever the scene is of them doing something, I'm going to shoot enough of the band so I can cut back and forth to the band playing whenever I want. But then I'm going to go back and shoot these scenes. Maybe I have 2 scenes. Maybe it's 2 people who got into a fight and they, boyfriend, girlfriend, and they walk off from each other. Then I have a whole bunch of scenes with the girlfriend being upset, and then a whole bunch of scenes with the boyfriend being upset. If I shoot enough different scenes, then I have the band playing, then I can use parallel editing where I can basically tell 3 stories: band playing story, girlfriend story, boyfriend story, as 3 separate lines, and then I can cut back and forth between them to create a more compelling video. So again, you're going to realize how, like, especially if you have a fast cut video, how much footage you're going to need. So take my advice, shoot more than you think you need. So again, using parallel editing to cut between these multiple scenes that could be intercut between. So if you just have one person in a room and that's it, well, that's all you got to work with. But if your story requires multiple things, you can break it up. The more scenes you have, the more interesting your video is going to be. Some of the weaker student videos are ones that are just in 1 or 2 locations and they just jump back and forth between the locations, and then it gets a little repetitive. So here you have the luxury in a music video to be a little more montagey, which means you can have different scenes kind of cut together because it's got a music, and especially if you have a band playing, you can jump around in time or jump around in different stories and make this all work. So definitely take advantage of that. And then, so in talking about each scene, please make sure you have multiple angles in each scene. So what you don't want to do is get that one shot of someone sitting here singing on the close-up, and then you're cutting to someone walking along on a beach, and then you cut back and forth from them singing back to the beach. That's going to be boring. So like each scene, I want to make sure I do multiple angles, so that's going to reduce redundancy. One of my pet peeves in movies or TV shows or anything, music videos, is when I see them cut back and recycle shots. They cut to a shot, cut back to something else, cut back to that same shot again. I'm like, it's the same shot. That's boring. So even if you think you don't need it, still plan on doing different angles. So even that means doing the low wide angle, then doing a close-up shot. Watch music videos. You could see how many different angles they cover the performer, even if they're just singing and walking and singing or whatever. Now, granted, there are specialty videos where they do one take and the camera's moving. That's a whole different ballgame. And if you're capable of doing that, well, fantastic. I'd love to see it. So, but if you're not planning on doing like these really, complex camera moves with one camera shot that's happening through the whole video, then you need to get multiple angles covering everything. And so again, that's going to take time. So anybody who's thinking that they could shoot this in 1 or 2 hours, good luck. It's not going to happen. So the other thing to think about, record in overcrank mode, slow motion, because this can add more dramatic impact to some shots. So a lot of times we'll shoot a whole scene and then we may shoot one angle of that scene and put it in slow-mo. So how do you do slow-mo? Well, pretty much if you're running with a DSLR, anything above 24 frames a second or 30 frames a second will become slow-mo in Premiere. So if your camera is capable of doing 60 frames a second at least, you could set the camera to 60 frames, shoot the scene, and then when you bring it into Premiere, it will stretch it out and make it 24. If you have a 24 frame per second timeline, when you bring 60 frame per second in footage, it will turn it into slow-mo. So that's one trick that a lot of people use, especially when these things came on the market, these DSLRs that were capable of doing that. Now, some cameras, if you're lucky to have like a Sony Alpha or maybe a Panasonic Luminex, they may go to higher frame rates. You may get to 120 frames a second. Do you need that? Depends on what you're doing. Something cool, maybe. But even simply 60 frames per second, shooting someone walking or doing anything can be interesting. And even if your camera has different speeds, I would still shoot it at 60 frames a second, because you can always speed it up later on in Premiere. It doesn't slow down as well. It gets a little distorted or pixelated with artifacts when you take regular motion and try to slow it down even more. So do yourself a favor, set your camera to 60 and run a pass or two with the music video on the scene you're shooting and get some slow-mo footage. It'll be useful. That makes sense, everybody?
I have a question.
Okay.
We cannot shoot on 24 and 60, right? Like both.
At the same time?
Yeah, like for example, maybe the band like could be on 24 frames per second and the music video could be on 60.
Yes, you can. And again, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit when we get to there. But you totally can shoot different frame rates, but you want to have your base frame rate set. And again, I'll get to that when I get down my list.
Yeah, because when you get to editing, I don't know if it works putting the 24 frames per second and the 60 on the same timeline.
No, it will work. You can do that in Premiere.
Okay.
Okay, so the other thing too is if you're going to be shooting a lot of times outdoors or even indoors, shoot scenes at different times per day to create lighting variations. So if you shoot everything, at high noon, well, it's all going to be kind of the same looking. But if you shoot some stuff in the morning, do one scene in the morning, you have a different type of light than the end of the day golden hour. They're going to look different and they can be cooler. So whenever I'm shooting a video and I'm going to be outdoors, I'm going to figure out what time of day we plan on shooting, or I'm going to rearrange the schedule to shoot at what time of day we want. And so, for example, over, right before class, the semester started, I think it was, yeah, it must have been. I was shooting some recreation footage for a show. Originally, the producer was going to schedule the shoot to start in the afternoon. He's like, yeah, we'll just start in the afternoon and go through to the evening. And it was still, it was right around September. So we're starting to lose that, 12 plus hours of daylight. And I went and looked, they sent me a pin to show me where the location was. And I looked at it on the map and I looked at it through my software for where the sun was going to be, and realized that if we shoot it in the afternoon, everything's going to be flat and ugly. And they had a set of mountain range they wanted to shoot into. And if we waited till that time of day, we wouldn't be able to shoot into it because it would just be blown out and nasty looking. So I talked to them and said, look, why don't we flip it, and why don't we get there at sunrise and shoot through the whole morning and then pick it up at the end and then eat lunch during the afternoon and then shoot all our small insert shots that we can kind of control in the afternoon and then shoot our bigger shots at sunset. And that worked because it changed everything. Because then we were able to shoot into the mountain, have backlighting, all this cool stuff that looked really nice. And that was just because I thought about the lighting instead of just saying, we're just going to pick a day and shoot. So thinking about where the lighting's going to be in your locations is pretty important. So what I would even suggest that you guys think about is if you have your locations figured out where you're going to shoot, even if it's in your backyard, go out there and see what the lighting's like at certain times of day. Like, oh, okay, I want to wonder what it looks like at the evening and see if that works, if that's going to be interesting enough. Or in the afternoon, don't shoot it in like mid-afternoon because the lighting's going to be might be flat, and unless that's something you're really looking for. But in my opinion, overhead lighting is not the most exciting. It's kind of flat and boring. So go to your locations and take a look. Even if you're shooting at night, still go there and shoot. If you're planning on nighttime shoot, maybe you want to get there around sunset because you get some cool sunset shots. Then the sun will dip down. You'll have this extra light coming in from the skylight, and then that'll go away, and boom, you've got 3 different looks from one location. And edit that into your video. It could be pretty cool. So thinking about that can kind of help you out. Does that make sense? Okay. And now let's just talk about lip syncing. So if you're going to lip sync, have some people lip sync, there's a couple of suggestions I'll make to you. First thing you want to do is have some type of playback system, whether that's an iPad, a phone, doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's a way for them to hear. And putting AirPods in someone's ears not going to cut it, because we're going to see them in the video, and unless that's intentionally part of it, with someone walking around listening to their music, then it's going to be a visual distraction. So that means you can't rely on these if the earbuds are not part of the story. Then you need some type of speaker, whether it's a small speaker or just having the phone out of range. But whatever you do, you want to make sure that your talent can hear it properly. So when we shot the music video 2 weeks ago, they had to rent a whole PA system aimed at the band, and we used an iPad to play the music through because they needed to hear it properly. The drummer was playing loud. They were all singing for real, because even though they weren't being recorded, they needed to be singing for real, so it felt real. So they needed something that was loud enough for them to hear it. So they actually rented something at Guitar Center to get it, a whole PA system to make it work. I'm not saying you need to do that, but whatever, if you're going to have some people, a band playing or someone lip syncing or playing guitar, you need to have it loud enough so they can hear it. Because if they're struggling to hear it, then they're not going to give you the performance that you're looking for. So that's the first thing. The second trick I would suggest is put a click track in the beginning. So you may have to use some audio software. You can go into Adobe and use Adobe Audition, bring in the WAV file from your song, and put 4 little beeps. So you get basically the metronome or the rhythm going, and it gives the performers a cue to where to start. So let's just say it starts with guitar playing, dun 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 dun, or like that. I'm going to put a 4 beat in the beginning, so it goes, when I play the clip, the music, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, start, and that gives everybody a place to know when to start. Because if you don't have those little clicks when the music, especially if this music starts really hard, then everybody's going to be off because they'll never get the timing right. So the 4 clicks will save you a lot of problems in the beginning. And if you're like, well, I don't know how to do clicks, you can just record 1, 2, 3, 4, put it into Adobe Premiere, chop it all up, and chop the 1, 2, 3, 4, put them in front of the WAV file, and then re-render that out to a new WAV file. So you don't even have to go into another program. You could just do it in Premiere. And that will get everybody on cue to start exactly when they need to start. So I always do it on every music video. I always make sure there's a 4 count in front for the performers, so they get right into the speed of where it's supposed to be. So that's an important thing. And again, best place to do it in Premiere. you can't have a click or anything like that, then just record your voice, drop it in, time it out so it feels right, and that'll help everybody out a lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a quick question if you can hear me.
Yep.
So are we allowed to have ourselves star in the music video if we can't find anybody?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Okay,
Yeah, I
thank
mean,
you.
yeah, I mean, we're still in pandemic blues, right? We're still, you guys are zooming out with me, so you guys have limited resources. So I would, if you have to use yourself, then that's what you have to do. Not a problem. Okay.
Are we allowed to include, since we're including songs that we don't own, can we include footage that we don't own? Because I saw like one of the ones from last year did like the Grindhouse opening.
Yeah, you can include stuff as long as it's not a majority of the footage.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
That's all. So what I don't want is someone to pull stuff off YouTube and just edit and create their own rehash of something. You need, part of this class is cinematography shooting, so you need to go out and shoot it. So as long as it's not the majority of it, I'd say, keep it under 30 to 40%, and then you're okay.
Okay.
So back to lip syncing or band playing, both fit in the same category. Really important thing you need to do is have multiple angles to help cover lip sync errors, because what's going to happen is at some point your performer is going to drift out of sync. And, even if they're really good at it, at some point you may have a moment where the sync drifts, where they're just off on the beat or whatever it is. And so if you just shoot one wide angle of everything, that's it. But if you shoot a wide shot, an extreme close-up, a low angle, a couple different angles, you can use those angles to edit around mistakes. So if in one wide take, they're dead on one part of the song, but then the next one they mess up, then you could cut to another angle, and good chances they're going to be good in that angle, so that it keeps the sync going. That's another trick that I use. I'm sure a lot of music video producers do the same thing too, to get around it. Because even when we were shooting with the Bus Boys 2 weeks ago, there's plenty of times that the lead singer was off, and it's because it was all about his performance and he was getting energetic, but he missed his mark a couple times. But we're fine because we shot so many different angles of the performance that if one part didn't work, boom, we can cut to the other angle and his sync should be on. So super important to keep this idea of multiple angles going. If you just shoot one, okay, but make sure it's perfect. If the lip syncs any bit off, shoot another one. In fact, I just wouldn't even do it. I wouldn't even recommend it. I would, even if I'm planning on doing one angle, I'm always going to do a backup angle just in case. That makes sense to everybody? So how about any other questions about what to prep and how to get ready for a music video?
I have a question, but it's not about the music video. It's about the action scene due tomorrow.
Okay.
So you said that in the assignment, you said the length was supposed to be like around 1 to 2 minutes, but I think I heard you say in the lecture that it had to be around 2 to 3 minutes. So like, what's the cap for how long you want it to be?
I'd like to keep it around 3. I mean, I had some people try pushing towards 4 and 5. So it depends on what are you looking at here?
Because I'm having trouble cutting it to get to that certain length. So
Where
like it's
at?
kind of around like 350.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, it's as long as it's within 3 minutes. What I'm not looking for is like somebody one of these classes, their edit was like 10 minutes. And that was way too much time. They were able to chop it down more. So as long as you're within that ballpark, think of these as loose terms, right? 3 minutes, not has to be down to the second, just has to be landing somewhere around there. If you've got 45-minute video, well, maybe we have to talk because you're a little bit off. Maybe overachieving, but maybe, I don't know. But jumping back to there, everybody else good. Everybody else got a pretty good head wrap around this idea of how to shoot a music video. Now or never, it's the last chance to get questions before we're going to be moving on. Okay, I think everybody's good then. All right, so let's talk about some settings for your DSLR. So here's the deal. You want to shoot over cranking, right? But you want to pick a base frame rate. This is the frame rate that you're going to shoot at. Remember we talked about base frame rate? And so you could do 24, you could do 30 frames a second. You can do 60 frames a second if you want. I'm going to suggest you do 24. And I have a couple of reasons why I would suggest you do it. The first off is it's going to be the most cinematic, right? Because movies are shot at 24, most episodic television shot at 24. Pretty much everything's shot at 24, unless it's documentary, and then it might be shooting at 30, or if it's news and sports, then it's at 60. So 24 is going to give you the most filmic look. So that's the first reason to shoot at it. The second reason to shoot at 24 is it's going to give you better slow-mo down the road. And you're like, well, what? 24 is not slow-mo. Yeah, it's not. But if I switch my camera to 60 frames a second, that's going to be way more frames a second than 24. So if I shoot everything at 60 frames a second, and then I want to try to do slow-mo, well, I can't because the camera base frame rate's at 60 frames per second. If I do 30 frames a second, I could do that, and then I could want to shoot slow-mo, I could shoot at 60, that's only double speed slow-mo. If I go to 24, that gives me just a little bit more slow-mo because 60, 24 over 24 is 48, and it's almost 3 times, the frame rate of 24 at 60, not technically 72 is, but it's almost there. So it's going to give you more slow-mo. So pretty much what that means is you don't want to shoot your whole video in 60. You want to pick the frame rate for 24 to shoot everything, and then the shots that you want to slow-mo, turn it to 60 and shoot them. And then when you're done, put the camera back in 24 frames per second so that you keep on with this base frame rate. So once you get all this stuff in, then you're going to make a timeline in Adobe with the 24 frames per second frame rate. How do you do that? Well, if you grab one of your clips that's 24 frames a second, drag it onto the timeline area, the canvas area, it will automatically create a 24 frame per second timeline. So be careful when you do that, because if you grab the 60 frame per second clip and drop it in there, well, it's going to make a 60 frame per second timeline, and you won't get any slow-mo. In fact, all your 24 frame per second stuff will be kind of funky. So 24 frames, shoot everything except the things you intend to shoot slow-mo, and then make sure you grab a 24 frame per second clip and make the timeline based off of that. So that once you once you make that 24 frame per second timeline, you can drag a 60 frame per second clip in there, and it should automatically stretch it out. If it doesn't, you can right click on the clip and go into the speed settings and tell it to stretch out to that, and it'll work. So if anybody has a problem with that, just text me on it and I'll let you know. Okay, Angel has a question.
Could it work to put the 60, like just edit the part that is 60 and then lower the frames to 24 and then export it, and then in your timeline of the video put it?
I mean, you could do that, but to me, that's a workaround. Did you shoot your video and shoot everything at 60?
No, I haven't shit, but I was thinking like to just like you said, like all the video is gonna be in 24, but the special scenes that I want to slow it down, I just wanna put them on 60.
Yeah. So if you follow what I just said, where you shoot those shots in 60, if you drop them in a 24 frame per second timeline, they should become slow-mo. You don't need to render it out or do any of that stuff.
So I don't have to do like basically anything, just put it on the timeline, on the 24 timeline.
Yeah, and if it plays back at 20, if it doesn't play back in slow-mo, you right click on the clip in the timeline, and there's speed settings in there for the clip, and you can change it there.
Oh, I see. All right.
So again, I should probably
Thank you.
jump back into Premiere. So if I I don't have any 60 frame per second stuff, but hang on a second. So if I want to check the speed on this, I'm going to right click on this. Hang on a second. Get the string out. There we go. So if I right click, I'm going to go down to time interpolation. No, I'm sorry, wrong one. Where is it? Hang on. Set adjustment. A speed duration right here. In here, if I can change the speed of this. So this will create slow-mo and fast motion, but if it's at 60, it should automatically come out. And if it doesn't, I can change the setting with the speed control here. So right now, if I wanted to make this slow-mo, I'm going to make it a 300%. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. Slower. So if I wanted to, let me just move all this stuff out first. Gonna make a little bit of room here. Okay, speed duration. I make this 100. Okay, it's back to normal. Now, if I wanted to make this slow-mo, I'm going to go back to speed duration and make it 50%. Now, it'll look like slow-mo, but it's not going to be that great a slow-mo because I'm basically taking 24 frame per second stuff and stretching it out. You can see it's got a little bit of a jumpy feel to it. But if I have 60 frame per second stuff in there, it should play back really smooth and be nice slow-mo. Does that make sense? All right, I want to take that as a yes to most people. So that's going to give you some cool stuff. I strongly recommend everybody should overcrank something. If they can get their camera to 60, and most cameras should be able to get to 60. If you got a better camera and you go higher, well, we'll give it a shot and see what happens. The other thing too is you could play around with different shutter speeds. So let's say you wanted to have one where it's a little, motion blurry, dreamy, or by making it a slower shutter speed, or if I want to have it more sharp and crisp and kind of more reality based, I could turn the shutter speed up to a higher shutter speed, like 1000 or something like that. But if I do that, I want to make sure it's consistent for either the shot or the scene. So if I'm going to do a whole scene that's dreamy, well, I'm going to keep that shutter around the same for all those shots.
Is there a way to crop a specific clip if we did bad camera work?
Well, yes and no. So go back to Premiere for a second. Let's go back to the shot. We go into editing. So here's the pluses and minuses. Can I crop and stuff in Premiere? I can, but I'm gonna have a limitation to what I can do, because if I have 1080 footage and I have a 1080 timeline, the more I crop, the more it's gonna pixelate. So this is one of the reasons why when we go out and shoot footage, we oversample our image. And what do you mean by that? So for example, the music video I just shot at the school, we shot in 5K resolution, but the timeline is going to be in 4K. So that gives me an extra 1000K to do zoom ins and adjustments in post without having any pixelation happen, because I'm zooming in, because the resolution's greater than the timeline. I can do that. So a lot of times people may shoot 4K and then make a 2K timeline and work on that. Or if I'm going to have a 4K timeline, I do 5K or 6K and have it better. But I'm not saying, but if you guys didn't shoot in 4K, which you shouldn't be, you can just double click on the clip here, go up to effect controls, and then I'd go here to scale, I'm going to click on 100. And now I can zoom in. But watch what happens if I go too far here. Looking a little blurry. So if you're going to do any adjustments, what I would say the threshold would be about 10%. So if I was going to adjust this, I wouldn't go past 110%. So here's 110. That'll help you out. Maybe you can go to 115 or 120, but even 120, not going to be a big deal for this assignment, but in the professional world, that's kind of the threshold I would want to do.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? All right. So we talked about different shutter speeds. So you can use it, and you might, if you're outdoors shooting, you're probably going to have to turn the shutter up to deal with the extra light. But if you don't want to do that, let's say you want to shoot at 180 degrees, or for 24 frames a second, 1/48th of a second, the only way around it is going to be using ND filters. So if you have a set of ND filters like these, you want, and remember we talked about these 1,000 years ago in the beginning of the semester. But remember, these are going to darken everything up and let less light get into the lens and allow me to run my aperture open even more. So on this one, we've got the darkest one from the school is a neutral density 1.2. So if I take this and see how dark it got everything a little bit, now you can see the difference. That's going to help you out with your f-stop so that you can run it open more, or let you run a slower shutter. So if you these are probably one of the best investments to get for your camera. Even if you're not shooting video, if you're just going to even shoot stills, not a bad thing to have that control, extra control, especially on super bright days. Go out in the desert and shoot, man, without these, life is miserable. So ND filters for outside. Again, obviously, double check the settings on your cameras. So make sure the ISO is where you want it to be. Make sure the white balance is set correct. Make sure the shutter speed, your f-stop, and constantly check them throughout scenes, because you just don't want to bump something by accident in one shot, and then you go to the next shot and you're like, oh wait, my white balance got shifted from 56K to 32K, and everything's going to look blue. Yeah. So this stuff happens. So once you set up your camera, just periodically make sure the settings are correct so that you don't have a problem. And obviously, if you're looking at the back viewfinder, you should see if the camera is blue, or a different white balance, and know that. But sometimes, you might not notice, and it might be too late. So checking your settings, figuring out what you want to shoot at, make sure your ISO is matched for the environment. If you're shooting broad daylight outdoors, make sure that ISO is down to like 200 or as low as it can get. If you're going to shoot a whole night scene, make sure your ISO is set to something higher, the highest you can do in your camera, with the most that's going to work for you with the noise. Make sure you test it out and check it out beforehand. So another tip, when you're shooting outdoors, try to use as much backlight as possible. So this is going to be my tip for you guys. Music videos should be shot with backlighting. It's always have the sun behind your subject, shoot into the sun, or 3/4 on the side here. But if you just shoot light behind you, front lighting them, it's going to be kind of boring. So guaranteed your stuff's going to look better if you go and shoot with backlighting. And that said, also, so you can do backlighting. Wait, if the sun is over here, you may let the sunlight come sideways on them, so they're side lit. Do anything but keep the sun behind you as the camera shooting this way. Just want to avoid flat lighting. It just, music videos, like I said, should be cool and should be, have stopping power. Like, wow, that's a really cool image. That's why they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make music videos. They want them to look cool. So part of that has to do with lighting. So do that. Also, don't shoot mid-afternoon. Shoot morning, shoot sunset. Those are going to be your sweet spots. That's going to give you the best cool light. Shoot at nighttime. If you shoot mid-afternoon and knock your video out all in one sitting, the lighting's going to be boring. And also, you want to see where the relationship of the sun is to where you're shooting. If you're going out into the beach, say you're going to go to Santa Monica or one of the beaches, and you're going to shoot there, don't go shooting in the morning because everything's going to be front lit, because obviously you're at the beach to see the ocean. And if you get there in the morning, well, the sun's in the east and you're going to be, they'll be to your back, they'll flat light everything. So always better to go to the beaches in late afternoon, especially nowadays when the sun's setting so early, and get those nice sun backlight shots. Your stuff will look so much better. Or even wait and shoot some stuff, and then as the sun just starts dipping down over the Pacific, get some cool shots with the sunset happening. It'll make a night and day difference. So that idea also applies to wherever you're shooting. So when you, again, go to your locations, take a look at where the sun is at what time of day, and try to calculate that and apply that to when you're going to shoot, so you have better lighting. And we didn't really talk much about lighting in this class, and we weren't supposed to, but just because we didn't talk about it doesn't mean that you don't want to pay attention to it. So keeping an eye on where the sun is, when it dips down behind the mountain or the trees or whenever, that give you an idea of when, how much time you have sunlight. And I do that all the time. In fact, I've got an app on my phone that I use all the time called Helios. And whenever we're outdoors shooting, I'm going to look it up and know exactly when the sun sets, so I have an idea of how much sunlight I have before it's gone. Because once the sun dips behind the horizon or behind the mountain or behind the building, your footage starts looking flat and like mud. So we don't want to do that. And again, if you're shooting at nighttime, different story, but then you want to make sure there's some lighting somewhere. So if you can do a night scene, if you have a location you're planning on shooting at night, take a look at what that location looks like at night. Are there street lamps? Is there something lighting it up? Because if you just go somewhere where it's completely dark, guess what? You're just going to have dark video. So look at the street lights. Do you need to bring a car and have the car headlights lighting up? Do I need to bring little lights to light up my scene? Maybe. It all depends what you're doing. But for me, when I'm shooting, I'm going to try and find an area that's got some street lights. And that's going to make my job easier. And even if I have just street lights behind the subject to make it interesting, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, hi. What happens if you're filming in a bedroom and there's not really that much good lighting? Because apparently we don't face the sun, we're like on the side.
Well, so is the room just dark?
I mean, no, because I'm planning on filming this during the night where I can.
Okay, I see.
This is about nighttime. It's about going to bed. It's bed.
Yep. All right, so I'll tell you my 2 cheats that I do for stuff like that. So the way you want to imagine it, because pretty much most of us go to sleep at night, right? And we turn our lights off, right?
Yes.
So the way I'll cheat it, and it's a cheat, is that I'll imagine, let's say the room that you're shooting in is the bedroom, and let's say there's a little bathroom next to it. I'll pretend that I'll turn a light on in the bathroom and then use the door to open it up and make like a little cut of light on wherever the subjects are going to be, to kind of make it look like there's some light coming in from another room. And it still is dark and moody enough that it looks nighttime, but there's a piece of light that hits everybody. It kind of makes it feel, like a night light or something happening. The other tricks that we would do, and this might be harder for you guys, probably will be incredibly hard for you guys, is that we'll find a window and send a light through there and make it blue so it looks like moonlight, even if there's no moonlight. Just in movies in general, if you see blue backlight on somebody, it usually means it's nighttime. So if you've got like a cheap light ring or something that can change color, You get it off, Amazon. In fact, yeah, somebody was talking about it. You could turn it really blue, keep your color temperature on your camera at 32K, which is tungsten, and get this more blue coming from the back somewhere. Backlighting at night can really help make it look like nighttime and still see something. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, if you watch old movies, you'll see there's always light. Even if it's a nighttime scene, they've lit something, even the background, like if we're outdoors shooting, I'll take one light, make it blue and rake it across the background so that there's some texture and detail there. And then I'll have secondary lights that light up my subjects. Let's say Jessica has a question. If the work is submitted in time, but the shooting technique is not good enough, will the score be affected? Can you talk a little bit about the rubric? Well, cinematography is going to be kind of graded on its own. So if we look at the edit itself, I'm going to judge the edit based off of certain criteria. Did you have enough inserts, cutaway shots? Did the edit contributed? So it's not like you're going to get one grade that's lumped grade for everything, and it's just based off of overall how this thing is that you've created. It's going to be broken into sections. So cinematography, yeah, it's going to be more of an aesthetic choice on it. I mean, you had good, decent cinematography. It's shots shaky, or the in focus, is the exposure look, is the lighting look good? All that stuff's going to come into play for the cinematography, but that's only one component of the grade. When I look at the grades for, say, the action scene coming up, there's going to be the first number 4, which is the development package. Well, I'm going to grade you on, did you do your development guide? Okay. Did you do a script? How's your script doing? Okay, that's a percentage of the grade. Did you do storyboards? Okay, well, that's another percentage of the grades. Did you do a shot list that's accurate to what you've done? Okay, well, all those 4 things come out to 100%. They're not broken up evenly, but there's each component there is figured out for what that grade is for that first section. Then the second section is the shooting stage. So the first component is broken up. It's going to be production value. Did you just shoot it without doing any set decking, or did you do anything that makes it look like it feels real? Then, okay, we get some points for that. Cinematography, which I'm not going to lie, is going to be the big chunk of that one. Did you have decent cinematography? Is it in focus? Is it sharp? I mean, not sharp. Is it exposed correctly? Did you think about the cinematography, or did you just kind of just shoot it with your phone and kind of whatever it is? That's another part. Did you block the scene out? So is there blocking that's done for the actors and everything, or you just kind of let it happen and kind of went along with it? Well, those 3 things equal what your grade is for, let's say, assignment number 5 in this next one coming up. And then when we get to editing, that one's a little more complicated. So 3 or more types of shots in your edits, and you do that. Okay, well, that's a percentage of your grade. Did you add inserts or cutaways? Okay, well, that's another part. Did you have overlapping action within your scenes? Okay, yeah, then that's another percentage. How many continuity errors did you have in it? Okay, so the more continuity errors you have, well, the less percentage of that grade you get. And then the narrative quality of it. Did the edit that you do completely help support the concept that you originally talked about? Is your edit kind of helping the story along, or did you just barely get it done and you're kind of struggling? So I know it's kind of a little bit vague, but without me showing you my chart with everybody's grades on it, that's kind of how it goes. So there's not just one, is it good or bad, and that's it. It's all these little components that are calculated together to figure out what your grade is. And when should we turn in the action scene? By tomorrow night. That's when it's due. So you have until midnight tomorrow to upload the scene, and then it's considered late.